All right, Council, let's call to order the public hearing of objections to bylaw 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration here on Monday, December 12th, 6:30 p.m. We are in the Council chambers at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. This is also going to be aired via Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any objections, there's still time to get it in, or at least Council will certainly have a chance to read it before in the future, but the email is pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. We'll get into the recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are in attendance. And before we get into the agenda, I wanted to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotu-Magadi people. So, for the agenda, could I have a mover to accept the agenda? It is just the, there will be a presentation, but it is just the hearing of objections. I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Would anyone like to declare one for this first meeting? Seeing none. So we're going to jump right into presentations.
Sorry, Your Worship, did you actually call all in favor?
Oh, I didn't call it, did I? All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's everybody. Thank you. And now we're moving into presentations. We will have our CAO, Chris Spear, just do a little bit of a secondary background to council on this as we continue to educate the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just let Mr. Nopper get set up here with the PowerPoint. And excuse my back as I turn back and forth to it. Dark backgrounds, courtesy of everyone that's doing this virtually. It's a little harder. The last one was a little harder to see. So, Council, and for any of you that watched the last presentation 3 weeks ago, this is kind of a rehash of it, just for everyone's sake that may have missed that at that point of time. So we're talking about it's officially called the Remuneration of Council Bylaw. It's 1802, and this is what the hearing of objections about. And I just want to go through some of the facts as, I guess, I perceive them and as I presented. So adequate compensation through various studies is important. It's to attract quality candidates that in this day and age when there is lots of volunteers needed and lots of organizations that can attract people, people have choices what they can do. And well, council's a good service, so is everything from Kiwanis, Lions Club, coaching, whatever. And so it's just something that can help attract the candidates that are needed in such a complex environment. As discussed before, council, as we all know, and especially with local government reform, is becoming a higher stress, many hours position. The town council meets a minimum of 6 hours formally. Then if you throw on top additional meetings and stuff, you're running 6 hours, per month. But in additional meetings and committees and things, you could easily double that. Then plus prep time is usually 2 to 3 hours per meeting. And then part of it, something that's interesting that has come out is that having higher rates is actually allows to be more inclusive for those that are economically disadvantaged, and that if there's people that are at the lower end of the income scale, they may have to make a choice between volunteering and giving up night shifts or a second job. And so this type of restructuring would allow those individuals to also participate in the local government process. Next slide, please. So local government reform is happening and a new organization is forming as of January 1st. It's still called the Town of St. Andrews, but we'll be welcoming new 3 councillors and we'll actually be swearing them in this Thursday night, 6:30, for those that would like to come to it. Many communities struggle with acclimation. For the Town of St. Andrews, we did have the bare minimum to have a competitive by-elections this past. We had a healthy election for this current council where we had, I think, 16 or 17 candidates for the positions. But prior to that, that council was fully acclaimed. So it comes in waves and bounces, and this may help this. And then, like we said, the complexity of planning is just increasing as time goes on. Add in climate change, the struggles with funding. Councils are juggling many priorities, and staff are trying to give them options with all of them, but ultimately you have to make the decisions based on information that we provide. What it should be noted is that there's I think 58 new entities built. Out of that, only 6 of us went to by-elections like St. Andrews. For every other area, the facilitator, with the help of a transition team, came up with what proper compensation was. In St. Andrews, and the other areas, Oromocto being one, I forget the other 4, but the council of the day had to come up with the new compensation if moving forward, if they so choose. Oh, thank you. So under current compensation, and I should say that for the St. Andrews column, that's what they're making right now. For the other municipalities, that's what's going to be within their earnings after January. So with the mayor currently around 13,000, the deputy mayor around 88, and the councilors around 75. In Eastern Charlotte, the mayor will be making 33, the deputy mayor 22. And instead of reading all these columns, I'll just say it goes from 37 to about 38. The deputies mayor making between 16 and 22, and councilors making as high as 21 and $13,000. So I believe I saw that actually in Ontario they have a formal mechanism in place to compensate council compensation, I believe, at least for anything that's not Toronto. And that would be the best thing, to be perfectly honest, but it's not here. It's always been left up to councillors, and even in the newest local governance reform, it's still being left up to the local councils to ultimately decide what they want to do. And so in the past, we've compared it to similar municipalities, number of meetings, what we've had for assets, things like that, just to try to find some type of number that the populace and the councils could live with. So earlier this year, the Association of Francophone Municipalities published a guide entitled Elected Officials Compensation. It was the first attempt, I guess, or at least a formal procedure to try to come up with various forms of compensation, and involved population, services provided to the public, number of institutions, which includes schools, stuff like that, average tax base, and then the size of the territory. Based on the raises we're seeing and the compensation across other municipalities, it looks like many of them were also going that way. So using the AFNB guide, and it can be downloaded, here are the various points. Things I want to talk about briefly is that, they talk about population, and population isn't necessarily a good indicator of the complexity of an organization. For St. Andrews, out of the 66 entities that are listed with compensation and the assessments, we're in the top third. That's excluding the cities. But even though we may be a smaller population, we have an assessment that's significantly higher. And so, for instance, we're only about 15% below St. Stephen's, the new rural municipality municipal district of St. Stephen, that it's called, population, but the 20% in the assessment, even though their population's probably triple ours now, I think they're close to 10,000 people. We have significant institutions in a town our size, with not only the 3 schools, but we also have the Biological Center and the Huntsman Marine Science Center. And again, there was an email that had come in about a project they're doing down there that requires us to address some things in engineering and things. So there's a complexity when you have these types of institutions that adds more to the complexity of council's decision making. The assessment per tax base, there was 3 different levels that goes with there, and St. Andrews was about double the highest level. So we're very, very lucky. But it's again, it's a it's a complexity, because as you have more tax dollars available, people are looking for more services to be provided. And I guess the one thing is the size of our territory is still relatively small in comparison to with many others. But again, with the Department of Transportation, for instance, still maintaining the roads and things, even some of these really large territories, the current municipal entities will still be the focus for councils for a few years. So the provincial averages, taking the cities out of the equation across New Brunswick, is the mayors are making $34,000, the deputy mayors about $17,000, and the councillors about $13,800. And so the recommended wages based on the AFNB simply is that the mayors could be between $34,000 and $42,650, the deputy mayor between $14,000 and $20,000, and the councillors between $13,000 and $18,000. So in the draft version of the bylaw, for rating one only, councils or staff brought forward the minimum of the range, which has been worked into the provincial budget already at a cost of about $153,000 for all 9 councillors and the mayor. So the updated compensation still puts the town of St. Andrews and their council at the lower end, or at least the equivalent of the lower end, still putting in a lot of time. And, compared to the local municipalities that, may not have the same services as us, the same assets, about the same level. So on, staff introduced the bylaw for review, and that was November 22nd, I think. I had it typed down and forgot to read it. Then, of course, tonight we have the meeting of objections. And then there is consideration for second and third reading in your agenda tonight that council can do with what you'd like to do with that. Oh, I guess that's it. So I guess, Your Worship, where it's a meeting of objections, it's not really appropriate for me to take questions at this time, I don't think.
No, I think that's fine, and council's already seen that, so they've already had the opportunity to ask questions. So thank you on that. So we are going to move to the hearing of objections at this point, but before we did, I just wanted council to know this is in the next meeting package, but when I look at those values, and I know it's when it comes to mayor, I actually think that value is a little high. I actually think that the mayor's salary could be lowered, and I've said it before, I don't actually do this for money, so I do it for the love of the community, but in the same sense, we all do appreciate compensation, and as we saw from that presentation, there are certainly some inconsistencies, but I'll be proposing in the next meeting to actually reduce my particular salary by 20 to 25%. And I'd also like your consideration that extra funds, because through our moderator that has been that has been proposed to local government for our budget, since that money has been budgeted by our facilitator, I'd actually propose that those funds get switched over to the firefighters to increase their stipend for this year, as I signed their checks most recently, and the amount of hours they put in versus compensation. I know it's a volunteer fire department, but it would be a great initiative to show that we appreciate them, especially with the danger that they take. So I just wanted to make council aware of that for the next meeting. So let's move into the hearing of objections. So this is a bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration, FA 221115, that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews is holding a public meeting to hear objections to bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration. So, all right, so at this point, we will open it up to the floor. I understand that we've only had one letter in to date, which has been cascaded to council.
Correct, Your Worship.
And so that has been submitted, and all of you have received it. So at this particular point, we will take it from the floor. We just ask that any speaker say their name, their address, but also that they do limit their comments to 10 minutes, as we do have another agenda after this as well. So at this particular point, I see that someone's at the podium. So if you'd like to state your name, your address, and go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Guy Gruen. I'm at 50 Ernest Street. I'd just like to add a few items for council's consideration on this bylaw. As Mr. Spear pointed out, and at the 21st of November meeting, the CAO identified the need to attract quality candidates and problems with acclamations as justification for a remuneration review. But The results of the last election and the recent by-election indicate that St. Andrews has an abundance of high-quality candidates willing to stand for office, signaling that we may not have that kind of a problem in this area. In addition, council was fully aware of the salary scale when they ran for office and knew that this remuneration was based on reflected the fact that this was a part-time job. It does not seem fair to the taxpayer, and especially the new residents from Chamcook and Bayside, to have a significant pay increase when the job description has not changed, and the addition of 3 new councillors should in fact lighten the workload for councillors. Council remuneration has always been a sensitive subject for both council and the public. It is therefore important that this process be done in as transparent and a fair manner as possible, and that the process be consistent with neighboring municipalities. So let's do a comparison of the neighboring communities. St. Andrews has a population of 2,686 and is primarily a seasonal tourism resort with an influx of tourists from May to September. St. Andrews is a destination resort, and visitors are generally people visiting the town for recreational purposes. St. Stephen has a population of 8,119 and is a regional hub with 3 international border crossings, a major highway, regional recreation facility, shopping center, large building supply outlets, car dealerships, a regional hospital, numerous gas stations, multiple fire stations, Service Canada and Service NB New Brunswick locations, land registry offices for the province of New Brunswick, and many other amenities that are consistent with a regional hub. St. Stephen has an influx of hundreds, if not thousands, of people each day either crossing the border, shopping in town, seeking medical attention, or obtaining government services. Eastern Charlotte has a population of 6,674, and like St. Stephen, is a small regional hub with a major highway, a ferry crossing to Grand Manan, large building supply outlets, multiple recreation facilities, numerous gas stations, salmon aquaculture industry, multiple government departments, the regional RCMP detachment headquarters, Service New Brunswick, multiple fire stations, multiple sewage and water treatment plants, and many other amenities that are consistent with a regional hub. Eastern Charlotte also has an influx of hundreds of people each day seeking police services, banking, gas, shopping in town, obtaining government services, or transiting through town on the highway and the ferry to Grand Manan. Eastern Charlotte is also a major staging area in the event of an incident at Point Lepreau facility. The larger residential populations and thousands of visitors present in St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a continuous basis significantly adds to the complexities of managing these regional hub towns, requiring a greater level of emergency preparedness, increased infrastructure requirements, more citizen interaction, and higher levels of risk. In contrast, St. Andrews is relatively dormant for a significant portion of the year, with few outside visitors and many residents that leave town during the winter months, which means the level of complexity is not the same. As part of the municipal reform initiative, excuse me, the salary of the mayor of St. Stephen was increased to $37,000, and the mayor of Eastern Charlotte's salary was increased to $33,000. The salary for the mayor of St. Andrews was left at $13,525 and was not changed by the province. One important metric in comparing salaries for different sized communities is the salary per person, or the cost per taxpayer. If you look at St. Stephen, the mayor's salary of $37,000 works out to $4.56 per person. Eastern Charlotte's mayor's salary of $33,000 is $4.94 per person. And St. Andrew's current mayor's salary of $13,525 equals $5.04 per person, which is more than St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a per taxpayer basis. The proposed increase of the mayor's salary to $34,000 would equal a cost of $12.66 per person, which is almost 3 times that of St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte on a per person basis. This may explain why the province elected not to change the salary base for the town of St. Andrews. The Local Governance Act, Section 96, states that it is prohibited conflict for council to use their position for personal gain, and clearly a significant pay increase would be a personal gain. To overcome this, the tradition of councils in the past has been to delay remuneration changes so that they apply to the new incoming council to avoid an obvious conflict of interest caused by council voting themselves a pay increase. It is also important to keep in mind that Town of St. Andrews Council salaries rise each year by the Consumer Price Index, which amounts to 6.3% increase this year, and that councillors have access to taxpayer-funded daycare services, benefits that are not available to most taxpayers. Therefore, out of fairness to the taxpayers of St. Andrews, and for the reasons cited above, I'm opposed to a 254% increase in the mayor's salary, a 66% increase in the deputy mayor's salary, and a 74% increase in councillors' salary, especially when many in our community are struggling with the effects of high inflation, increased interest rates, high fuel prices, and spiraling food costs. My recommendation is that council appoint an independent committee with no ties to council or staff to hold public meetings on council remuneration. The committee can gather input from the public to prepare and present a recommendation to council to adjust the remuneration of the next council. This would avoid the obvious prohibited conflict under the Local Governance Act that voting on an increase in personal compensation would cause, and diffuse any concerns of the public over this issue, especially with new residents just joining our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that's here? Okay, and just the one online, correct? Is there anyone online that, Mr. Nopper? Okay, so at this particular time, at 6:52 p.m., I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. Got Deputy Mayor Akji and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. All right, let's call to order the special council meeting here Monday, December 12th, 6:45 p.m. We are at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex at the council chambers. This will also be airing on Zoom and Facebook. And if anyone has any questions on anything on the agenda this evening, you can do so by contacting pnopper at townofstanders.ca. Once again, all members of council are in attendance, so thank you once again. I think this is I know we have a swearing-in ceremony. This is our last meeting, technically, of the year, so thank you, everyone, for being here. And I wanted to recognize that we are in the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Magadi people. I'll be looking for a mover to help approve the agenda for this evening. I've got Councillor Heenan. I'm trying to look to my right, but I saw Councillor Hurdle first. So any changes to this agenda? Okay, all in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. This agenda has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Myself, though, I will be declaring one for the closed session item under, I think it is 68(1)C. So I'll recuse myself at that point. I just ask that council makes that the last item of the closed session so I can maybe get to my car a little earlier tonight, and I'll be thinking of you as I drive home. So if there's no other, there's no presentation, so we are going to get right into the introduction, consideration of passing of bylaws. So at this point, I think we're going to go over to Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Akji, rather.
Thank you, Your Worship. FA 221115. And it's the bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration, second and third reading. As part of the local governance reform, the province has set the rates for council remuneration for the new municipal entities that had full general elections. For those municipalities that had by-elections, as they still have working councils, it is the responsibility of those councils to adjust their own council remunerations. Most municipalities have had their council remuneration updated to reflect the increased responsibility and commitment. A new formula for the updating compensations for councillors was put out by the Association of Francophone Municipalities of New Brunswick, AFMNB, for use by councils to identify their remuneration. The town of St. Andrews has used the AFMNB formula for calculating remuneration, and it is recommended that the council remuneration bylaw be updated to reflect the important role served by mayor and council. Chris Spear, CAO Treasurer, provided a presentation on council remuneration and the formula used to determine the ranges. So the first reading was on November 21st, 2022. And public hearing of objections was tonight, December 12th, 2022. So now we're having the second and third and final readings. Council can make changes to the bylaw prior to the third and final reading. So the action right now is a motion that council grants leave for the second reading of bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the town of St. Andrews council remuneration. And I so move this, your worship.
Could we have a seconder for that motion? Get it on the floor. Got Councillor Gumashell. All right, so it's open for discussion. I guess just to kick off a comment I made earlier, I would propose that we lower my salary by 20% to $27,520. I know it would make me significantly under what other mayors are in Charlotte County, but I'm hoping that in response to that extra savings that has been budgeted for by the facilitator, that I don't think we have to necessarily bring it forward tonight, but maybe with that savings, the CAO and clerk could bring forward a look at the fire department's stipend, just because I do think it's very low. And I think it's an opportunity to, with the dollars, to maybe allocate it if council would entertain that. But over to you on your thoughts on that proposal, council. Councillor Heenan.
Your worship, I think it's a very generous offer that you're making towards the fire department, and I think it shows your dedication to this community. I just still stand behind my comment that you work very, very hard for this community, and there's not anything that happens in the town that you're not at it, and I just feel that you're really underpaid, and I mean, I just feel that you're undercutting yourself, your worship.
I appreciate
And
that.
I just think that the amount of work that you do in comparison to other communities, I mean, it's phenomenal. So if it's what you want, you can have it. But I'm just saying, I wanted you to know that I do think that council appreciates everything that you do. And so by saying that, if that's what you want, I support it. It's just my thoughts. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. But just to respond to that, it is what I want. I think that when I did this, I didn't do it for the money, and I still don't, but in the same sense, I think getting paid less than councillors in neighboring communities for how much time a mayor puts in, I don't think that is right either. So this is my way, and if I can use that to leverage a little pull for the fire department, then that's what I'm trying to do here. But again, we'll take those separately, and you can weigh in on that when the time comes based on the savings. Anyone else? Councillor Blanchard?
Only to say, I would agree with Councillor Heenan that, to undercut and undervalue the work that the mayor, that you do, and the council does, I don't think is necessarily right. I think we could deal with the issue of the stipend for the fire department separately, if it is lower than it should be, given the current conditions, I think that is a separate issue unto itself, and I don't necessarily think it needs to come out of the mayor's salary to do that. I think that's something we could look at separately. So that would be my comment, but again, whatever your wishes are, I would support that. But I think that can be an issue that can be dealt with separately.
Thanks so much. Deputy Mayor Akaji?
As you know, Mayor, I've been on council for a long time, and we voted not to accept a raise. We were in here to help the town, to be for the town, and all of our councillors, all of you, especially you are at everything. So it's wonderful to see, because our mayor is out and about, but our councillors are also out and about. This past, Santa's parade, we were out there. This council is out and about, and people recognize us and see the volunteering that you do, or the work that you do. You do much more than probably the rest of us, but still, the support is there with this council, and I certainly appreciate it. And for the last few councils that we've been on, we have refused a raise. So I don't think this one-time raise for the next council that's coming in. I think we have new councillors coming in. I think that's helpful, and I will go by the decision of the group. But I don't think, as Councillor Blanchard said, that you should give up your money for the fire stipend, that we can, as we say, we can find it someplace else. And they also deserve to be rewarded, because you're right. They risk their lives. They do so much for our community. It would be nice to reward them as well. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I will need a mover to amend, but I guess worst case scenario, I could always make a donation back to the town of St. Andrews if that was my wish. But I would need a motion to amend. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add to the discussion so far, I guess, would be that, again, the way I kind of understood how we got into this was, again, we were trying to bring the town of St. Andrews Council and Mayor, Deputy Mayor, onto the same level as basically the rest of the province, using their formula. So again, while I understand what you're saying and completely respect the gesture, I do think we need to think of, again, future councils and mayors as well. And if this is the opportunity for us to do this, then I would suggest we do it and not leave the town in a situation where the mayor might have to do this again to get up to the sort of provincial standard. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Valid point. Okay. I think I'm getting some consensus here. Mr. Daufer.
Sorry, Your Worship. I just want to bring some clarification to a couple of the comments that were made during the public hearing of objections.
I'd appreciate that, actually.
So first one is actually the Local Governance Act, Section 96, where it talks about conflict of interest. This is not a conflict of interest council. This is, councils have the right to set their remuneration at the level as they so choose. Now, understanding that 56 other entities in this province were set by the provincial government this year with local governance reform, those in the by-election situation, as they have an active council still working, the decision was put back to them to make and to put the choice on. CPI increases, just so council notes that most of the time council either takes a very minimal increase or doesn't take an increase at all, and that has been tradition of previous councils, although it is written in the bylaw that you can. A lot of the time it's deferred or not.
This council deferred it.
Correct.
Did not do it last time.
I would also like to reiterate that there was a section that was noted about babysitting services. So that was actually written into the bylaw by the last council, and it was actually a service that is open not just to children, but if there are elderly or people that are in need, that need an extra care service, that was made available to give a buffering for council, and it's really only a 3-hour limit on it at a $15 an hour type, up to $75 for a session. So it's not dramatic within any scope of beyond supporting a counselor to be able to do what you guys do. So I just wanted to make sure that those points were reiterated to council.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Otherwise, there's no motion. Go ahead, Councillor Hurdle.
Thanks. I just wanted to circle back around on some comments that were made earlier, just around And again, this is one of those impossible decisions for us to make. I think sometimes it's difficult whichever way you go, but what I keep coming back to is the sense of democracy around this and how democratic a choice like this actually is. We talk about, there is a stipend in place, sure, but you have to be of a certain financial mobility to be able to exist on what we've historically been paid. And that reduces the subset of people that can participate in council and can participate in local governance to a very small set of people. And that's really unfortunate, and I don't think that really benefits a thriving community or benefits the health of a governments of a small community either. So at the end of the day, you have to be able to afford to be able to do this. So opening this up, bringing this forward so that the historical CPIs that we've turned down, at a certain point that has to get caught up so that it's fair to everyone who wants to participate in this, and that's why I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thanks. Perfect. All right, then if there's no other motions, I guess, any other comments, I'll call the question then. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That is everybody that has been carried. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The second motion is that Council grants leave for the third and final reading of bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Okay, a seconder for that motion. Got Councillor Heenan. Any discussion for third reading?
Your Worship, there's two things, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
First, you forgot to read that last one, so.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but I guess the other thing, maybe I misunderstood because I was double checking something, but you had requested a reduction. I don't think there's ever a formal motion to make that.
There wasn't.
So you're not going to move forward?
I don't think I had the,
Okay.
support for they're all shaking their head at me.
Okay, just want to formal.
Yeah, so do you want me to read it and then continue on? Okay.
Your Worship, you just have to read it by title. You
Yep.
read it in full the last time.
Absolutely. It's bylaw number 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of Sarah's council remuneration. Number 1 is definitions, 2 is remuneration of council, 3 is repeal and effective date. It was read the first time the 21st day of November of 2022 and read the second time the 12th day of December of 2022. So I have a mover and a seconder. Can I continue with that mover and seconder though? Okay, and any more discussion for third reading? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of going to third reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
All right, so I will once again read it. It is bylaw 22-07, a bylaw relating to the Town of St. Andrews Council remuneration. Number 1 is definition. Number 2 is remuneration of council. Number 3 is repeal of effective date. It was read the first time the 21st day of November of 2022, read the second day the 12th day of December 2022, and read the third time on the 12th day of December of 2022. So that has been completed, and I believe there's another one for Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Yes, there is. Couple more. Thank you, Your Worship. FA 221210. And this is the Town of St. Andrews capital budget for 2023. Council was able to, and the background is this, sorry. Council was able to review the 5-year capital plan for the Town of St. Andrews for both general capital and water and sewage funds, including sources of funding and projected debt levels. If council is satisfied with staff's recommendations, a motion to accept the budget to allow planning and design early in the new year would be appropriate. So the motion is this, that council moves to accept the 2023 to 2027 budgets for the general capital and water and sewage capital funds. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder for that one. Okay, we got Councillor Blanchard. Any discussion on this? Do you want to add any context to it, Mr. Spear, or do you feel?
Your Worship, it might be appropriate because the public hasn't seen any of this to allow me to do a presentation on it, if
Fair
council's
enough.
willing to.
I think it'd be appropriate, and it's important to note, again, that normally this would be a lot longer process, but due to municipal reform, this has really been something that just recently, as in the last month, that you found out that we can actually pass. So that is why it's being done this way.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've moved over here just because there's a big crink in my neck as I was trying to look at the presentation behind me, and I think I was giving the camera people fits, so it might be a little easier to do it this way. And so I am presenting the capital budgets for 2023 to 2027. It should be noted, Council, that really your most focus is for next year only, and there's a couple of big items that you'll be reviewing even after the approval of this, specifically the wharf and future trails. That is just to get us started. So to remind everybody, there is two budgets. There's a general capital budget that comes out of tax revenue, which is everything but the utility. So consequently, there's a utility capital budget. So under local government reform, the operational budget is actually still waiting for final approval. As the mayor said, that we had input through a technical committee, and staff participated in putting up our expenses and things. But the final approval has actually been put off by the government as they review all the municipalities until December the 15th. But having said that, we have a good idea what our tax rate is, and our facilitator has made that known to us so we could work off of that as we put this together. But we only found out a couple of weeks ago, on November 24th, that we could actually had the authority to approve the capital budget. And so we had the plans already in place. It wasn't like we were sitting on it. But once we found out that the current council could move forward with it, we decided we wanted to present it for your consideration. Mr. Knopper? Okay.
Uh-oh.
Like me lead you in a course of jingle bells?
Leave it to the
Sorry, Council, I
accountant's
just want to
budget
stop share for a
presentation to
second.
freeze Zoom.
I haven't done
Your
it
Worship-
yet, Mark. Don't cry.
Your Worship, do you want a motion for a recess for a few minutes, please?
Yeah, we're looking for a mover to move to recess. I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Neal. All in favor of going to recess, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in recess. All right, let's have a motion to come out of recess. Can I have a mover? I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji. I'm looking to my right, Councillor Gubishel. All in favor of adjourn or coming back into order, whatever the saying is. Everybody, we're back live. All right, so we were in the middle. I don't know at what point it froze, but I believe it was when our CAO was started talking about the budget. I think probably starting from the top would make the most sense. Would that be correct?
If you wish, Your Worship.
I think we probably should, just to be safe, because I don't know when it froze.
Okay, just when the clerk is ready. If it doesn't go into slideshow format, we can just do it off of that. Yep. Hey, folks, sorry about that. We had crashed, so we're going to try to start from the top here just in case. So as we talked about before, there's two separate capital programs that council has to budget for under regulations and the Act. The utility capital, which is water and sewer, and then the general capital, which is everything but water and sewer. Next slide, please. The notes that I don't have. Just give me a minute, Your Worship. I'll call it up on my phone, and then I can go through it.
Thank you.
For those interested, we can either post it to the website tomorrow or come get it at Town Hall. I'll see if I can find it here. All right, I'll just do it off my notes here, Your Worship. So under local government reform, there's been, we just found out recently that we're able to approve the capital budgets. that, as the mayor's talked about, that only local committees were going through the operational budgets over the last several months. And we know approximately what the tax rate is, which I guess I won't announce, but it does allow us to figure out how much money we have left towards capital purchases to be able to balance out the funding of that. So the question may be is why to approve it now? Well, there's 2 or 3 points. St. Andrews has had success over the last few years of getting our tenders out early over the winter. So upon this approval for especially the in-ground projects, water and sewer and such, and paving, we could get those tenders designed and put together and out probably in February for reading. And for most of you that live in the Platte this past year, you know that we started in April in our in-ground infrastructure stuff, and that saved us substantial funds, up to 20 or 30%, or sorry, 10 to 20% below our estimates at the time. Something else that's important is that, thank you, Mr. Knopper, is that when we go to borrowing, we have to go to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, which, as you know, is a long process. And in order to get ahead of all the projects, we have to make that application first. There is a motion on there tonight, if you approve the capital budget, to approve an application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, so we can get that out early in the new year to make the February meeting and start the process. And another important thing to realize, of course, is we're still experiencing delays in delivery. So especially for commercial products like pumps and pieces for arenas and stuff, we're months and months getting this stuff together. And so, for instance, we have a couple of things like a compressor we'll talk about in a bit for the arena, but we'll probably order that early in the new year and hope we have it in place by the end of the summer to be installed. I guess we crashed again, so I'll just keep going.
Your Worship, we crashed again now.
So can we continue, Your Worship, just with the...
So we can
go
upload
up
this
and
after.
CHCO can post it, give it to us to post in the morning, if that's okay.
Let's, council, I'll look for just some consensus. I would say to continue, just because the essence of time with the kind of the last meeting of the year, but over to you. Would everyone like to just resume? Just a quick show of hands if you do. All right, we're going to continue, and then we just want to make sure it's uploaded after.
Yep. And so we'll talk about the general capital fund, and these are things that aren't related to the utility. So for the highlights, there's about $4.8 million worth of capital purchases projected for next year. But luckily, about $2.3 million of that's covered by capital grants. And as most people remember, it's the wharf project, whatever that looks like, and trails. There is $875,000 of borrowing that is projected. It should be noted, though, that all of that borrowing is authorized previously, and this is just a carryover from prior years. For 2024, we have $6.3 million in projects. Again, most of that is the wharf. $2.2 million in capital grants. But there is $2.7 million in borrowing projected for that year. Consequently, I think there'll be a larger discussion by council going forward once we start to look at design, how much investment you want to make in the wharf and alternative designs and things as the prices have escalated. And so please don't feel that if you approve this tonight that I'm going to get up to
Recording in progress.
get started at work tomorrow and order a new wharf. So a lot of the stuff will
Recording.
be put off. Am I the only one hearing voices or in my head? So upcoming major projects include the new ladder truck, which actually council approved last year. It's a 2-year delivery time. So hopefully, if we're really lucky, we might have it this time next year, but we'll probably just know that it's going to be coming in a couple of months' time this point next year. So we're not expecting it until February of 2024. The wharf and the square project is currently on the design, the preferred design is $8 million, which is a significant investment with the town. Even covered, 2/3 by other levels of government. That's a lot of debt for the town and will require further debate and discussion. We also have the first phase of the trails were completed this year's Most Know Up Cemetery Road, and now we're meeting with the Trails Committee over the winter to come up with recommendations for Phase 2. Equipment and vehicles. We have a 2016 trackless, which is our sidewalk machine, which is a big part of our snow removal after the storm. It's also with a number of sidewalks we have in town now and the dependence people have in getting the sidewalks cleared up as people are getting out. It's highly recommended we stay at having 2 of those in our fleet. We're also looking at adding another thermal imaging camera to the fire department for $15,000. That's actually a replacement, not new, if I remember, and that was early on in my time with the town when we bought the first set, and something that's invaluable for a whole lot of reasons. And that's also put on multiple trucks, and I think this might be the second one. Councillor Neal would know more than I. Then in 2024, we have the $1.5 million ladder truck, which again was awarded earlier this year, and then staff is suggesting that we replace our sweeper truck, which is a valuable tool for $98,500. But again, that's
recording
not till,
in progress.
That's not till 2024. Under road, sidewalks, and trails, we have asphalt related to in-ground water and sewer work. So our operations manager tries to ensure that when he's not replacing asphalt, that he's replaced any old water lines and sewer lines underneath. And so for next year, there's about $479,000 worth of work that should be completed. Something that is on our agenda that council seemed to like is the widening of Prince of Wales Street. If you noticed from near the park and at Indian Point and for a couple of blocks, we've widened the trail with enough room to put in, widened the road enough to put in a 1 meter walking lane. And we're going to continue that over the next 2 years is our proposal. It's about $160,000 for this year to continue that. We'd like to asphalt the Centennial Park walkways. For 2 reasons. Number one is they tend to grow in really fast. That is, as much an effort as we make, the things get washed out. But in this area, when we're trying to increase the accessibility of the town, that'll go a long ways in doing that. And so it'd be highly recommended that we do that, but that's only $30,000. As council might remember, we deferred some paving work this year. That when the tender came in over the summer, it was about 25 or 30% above what our projections were, so we canceled it. But there's about $68,000 of that work to be done next year to be tidied up on part. So for 2024, if council continues with the widening of the lanes, it'll be $200,000 at Prince of Wales. Canterbury Close has never had a decent seal coat put on it. The town set that up back in, I'm going to say 2008, I think. And so there's $120,000 to get that road with its final coat and to pulverize what's there. There's a bit of a mess. And then asphalt related again to water and sewer projects is about another $320,000. Under buildings and structures, the arena is going to require another $76,000 worth of work this year. It includes windows and blinds, doors, as we continue to go through and revitalize the building for the future. The big ticket item is an arena compressor. As I mentioned earlier, is $120,000. That'll mean our main ice plant is just about all new and should give us another 50 years of use. There isn't some arena electrical and plumbing for about $14,000 just to slowly upgrade some of the facilities here. Within the courthouse, this is a project that's been deferred, potentially because of weather, but because we found out there's some structural issues at the courthouse that should be addressed. Not major issues, but things in the envelope that need to be replaced. And so it's about $75,000 for that. The good news with that is we anticipate funding of about 50% or better to come from the province and federal, and provincially from the federal. But that'll be local painters. It's too big of a job to do all 4 sides, so the cost has gone up compared to what we budgeted last year. So we're going to have to bring in a larger company that specializes in big projects like that. The sheeter shingles at the museum should be replaced, and the parking lots at the arena here and Ross Museum, thank you, lost my mind, both should be resurfaced. Those are projects that, so for all properties, about $500,000. Oh, and I missed, the library roof has to be replaced too. It is in pretty bad shape, and we've had some leaks, and we thought we'd get a few more years out of it, but we did a visual inspection earlier this year and realized that it's in probably critical shape. So staff were able to patch it enough to get us through this winter, but if approved by council, it'll be an early spring project in order to get that completed. Part of the issue too, it's one of those flat roofs, which means a new membrane and asphalt and gravel and things, which is always a more expensive option than a typical pitched roof. For 2024, things that are on the potential is $140,000 in electrical upgrades. That's something that probably can be deferred over or phased in over several years, but under asset management, it is recommended. There's about $80,000 more at the arena. The steps at the Ross Museum have to be replaced, and the fire hall needs some work to the building itself, around $32,000. So again, all those are options in a couple of years' time. Stormwater mains, as part of the infrastructure work, are also due for next year for Alexandra Crescent and Augusta Street, which come up to pretty near $400,000. And then Market Square, like I said, depending on what council decides, and there'll be discussions over the winter about that, but right now, council gave us instruction in November to go and do kind of the phase one, which between the square and Market Wharf is going to be about $2.8 million next year. And then potentially in 24 and 25 up to $5.5 million. So that'll be discussed and further possibly with the community to determine what the best route to go in is. I've got something here as new asks. One of them is washrooms at the Point, that in a partnership with the Dragonfly Center, we're going to be able to put washrooms on the other side of the road across from the Point Park, on the other side from where the granite statue is. Most of that money is probably going to come out of the town's portion of the tourism accommodation levy that we've been saving. That's $133,000, but it'll be available to walkers and the residents or the workers at the park, which hopefully will allow us to remove the porta potty that we've been keeping there over the last several years. With the new size of council coming on and the fact that we require half of CHCO to be down here to film our meetings right now, we are looking to upgrade council chambers, pretty near $20,000 and new cameras, microphone systems and things, but that'll be something that should be good for 10 to 15 years. Public Works is asking about heat pumps at the garage. It's about $60,000. So we did the fire department this year, and to quite success. Right now, they're using those big coiled heaters, like construction heaters, we'd call them, and those things are significantly inefficient. So this would go a long ways to helping that, and there's probably funding available to that we'd hope. And our past experience has been you save 50 cents on the dollar for everything you invest in there. So within 3 or 4 years, they should pay for themselves. And then Public Works is asking for a hydraulic dump for their 1 ton, I think it is. And it's basically for the leaf collection that right now, for you that have seen it, the truck is about at chin level for some of our guys. And so when they're picking up bags and stuff, they're continuously throwing them up high. This would be a trailer affair that would go along, and they'd be able to just load them, at chest level or lower than chest level, and make that so much easier in dealing with it. I've also set aside council. You made a priority early in your mandate towards housing. And you've made a lot of investments this year, but knowing there's still some projects, including an RFP that closed earlier last week, we've set aside $100,000 for 2023 and then another $225,000 for 2024 in housing development costs to continue that initiative. We've also have 2 recommendations for additional security measures in town. We've been demoing cameras, and now they're actually installed in the arena here that are based on the cloud, are able to have better audio and very high quality video. And we're asking for $65,000 for next year to continue that project for the rest of our facilities. We also are asking for $15,000, which would, depending, we discussed with council, it would either fully camera a full block or partially camera several blocks. That's to be determined, but that'd be 7 or 8 blocks, and our recommendation would be in the downtown area. Not so much for speeding, but just to have an eye, and because we have been experiencing some vandalism and some other issues that have been going on and getting increasingly worse over the last couple of years, and it maybe have come time to have these. So there's a 5-year summary, council, that I'm not going to read all through. And remembering that most of you're just approving next year's is really, in that the 5 years is put out just to see some of the things that are coming. But the next 3 years are pretty heavy, with 4.8 million projected projects, 6.3 in 2024, 3.9 in 2025. Again, we have some significant grants, but over that course of time, our borrowing is going to go up pretty near $5 million, which is significant for the town of St. Andrews. But having said that, our debt servicing level is only 4% now, and debt servicing is what percentage of interest and principal is of our budget. And based on our current growth of the last several years, at the end of 2027, if we did the basically $8 million worth of the wharf project, if our debt servicing ratio would still only be 8%, which is still considered healthy by the provincial standards. But again, that's not necessarily a recommendation to do it. It's just to let you know that it could something that could be done, and discussions have to be had on how to proceed. So we're going to jump over to the water treatment plant, and right now, to continue the upgrade of its midlife cycle, there's about $126,000 set forth for 2023. The wastewater treatment plant has about $57,000 set up for it. And then we're asking to replace portions of Champlain Avenue, which would go from the bottom of a cemetery over past what I call Lady B's Museum, or Lady B's Mansion, but it's also Oppenheimer Museum, all the way to the end of the road. That line is old. Alexander Crescent, which should have been or could have been replaced 4 or 5 years ago. It was lower on the priority scale, but it should be time to address it. And then Harriet Street from Water to Queen. And then, like the general fund, we do have an extra $100,000 set aside in the water fund, or the water capital, towards new housing. In 2024, we have just water main replacements, that most of the refurbishments of the treatment facilities is completed. And there will be 2 or 3 blocks of Prince of Wales, 3 blocks of Parr Street, and then Queen Street from Harriet to Edward, for a total of $1.4 million. Over that period, we only have a 4-year budget for that, and over the 4 years, we have about $4 million in anticipated debt that we could take on. But debt servicing ratio in utilities is typically high because it's capital intensive. And right now we're at about 23%. And if we continue in 3 years with those proposed plans, it'd go up to 36%. From staff's perspective, we've been taking on a lot of the oldest infrastructure that needed to be replacement. There's things there that are still in from the 50s and 40s. And so that's why we're being aggressive over the next few years. And the anticipation is that once we get to the end of 2026, we'll be able to significantly slow down the amount of infrastructure work, but it's still recommended that we move forward at that pace, Your Worship and Council, but ultimately it'll be up to you. So at this point on my beautiful presentation, I'm asking if there's any questions from Council before I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. So Council, any questions on anything? I know that we've been following up since we've seen that individually, but... Okay, doesn't appear to be. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Mr.
Worship.
Spear. Appreciate the presentation. Okay, so we did have a mover and a seconder. Is there any other discussion on this particular motion? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody that has been approved. And it is the Deputy Mayor show this evening, I think. Yeah. The star of the show.
So, The next one is FA 221211, and it's the application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board for 2023. So the background is this. As part of the 2023 budget process, Council agreed to borrow $195,000 in the General Capital Fund and $855,000 in the Utility Capital Fund to partially finance capital expenditures. The below motion is the first step in the process and will allow the town to submit an application for early 2023 to be heard by the board. So the motion is this, that it be resolved that the municipality of the town of St. Andrews submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for the authorization to borrow $1,050,000 for capital expenses for the following items and amounts. So the purpose is the general fund, transportation services, resurfacing roads. The amount will be $195,000, and the term will be for 15 years. Total general fund will be the $195,000. The utility fund, the water mains, for Champlain Avenue, Alexander Crescent, and Harriet Street. So for Champlain Avenue, it'll be $400,000 for 20 years, the term. Alexander Crescent, it will be $200,000 for 20 years, the term. And Harriet Street, $55,000. The sanitary sewer mains on Alexander Crescent will be in the total of $200,000, and the term will be for 20 years. So therefore, the total utility fund will be $855,000, and the term will be 20 years. Our grand total will be $1,050,000. I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion. Got Councillor Neal. Any discussion on this motion?
Your Worship, sorry. I'm going to have to ask for an amendment. It's
Did I
my
read it
mistake.
wrong?
We'd prepared this, and then the budget was updated after. And so I would ask, within the presentation, I only said we needed about $644,000 under the utility fund for borrowing. So maybe I'd ask that a motion to remove Alexander Crescent
Okay,
from the
so
proposal.
it would be, we would need a formal mover for that, so it'd be everything that the deputy mayor read, with exception of Alexander Crescent for $200,000 over 20 years, would be removed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
can I have a mover for that motion? I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of approving that amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everyone, it's been amended. I do have a mover and a seconder on the original still, or do I have to get another one? I think I'm good there. Am I, just a point of order for Mr. Spear, Mr. Knopper. I already have a mover and a seconder. We've approved the amendment. I do not have to get another mover or seconder. Is that
No, now
correct?
you're just voting on
So
it.
I can call the question then?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody that has been carried. Next motion.
All right. Reference number FA 221213. And it's the Town of St. Andrews Year-End Reserve Fund transfers. The background is this. The Town of St. Andrews maintains 4 reserve funds where monies can be put into for the future use or withdrawn for current year's use, depending on the need. As per regulations, these are done by motion before the end of the fiscal year. After reviewing final projections for the end of 2022, staff makes the following recommendations. And the first motion is this. Be it moved that council authorizes $5,000 to be transferred from the Utility Operating Fund to the Utility Operating Reserve Fund. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Seconder for that motion. I've got Councillor Heenan. Any discussion? All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we're on to the next one.
Be it moved that council authorizes $175,000 to be transferred from the General Operating Fund to the General Capital Reserve Fund for financing future capital projects. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Perfect. We'll look for a seconder. And we've got Councillor Blanchard in just by a hair.
Faster, Councillor Hurdle.
All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody that's been carried. Next motion.
Be it moved that council authorizes $25,000 to be transferred from the general operating fund to the general operating reserve fund to help offset future shortfalls. And I so move this, your worship.
Thank you. Second, very quickly, Councillor Hurdle. Any discussion on this one? Okay, we'll call the question then. Signify by saying aye if you support this
Aye.
motion. Anyone opposed? That's nobody. That has been carried. Last one.
And the
Your worship-
final
Sorry, Your
motion
worship, who was
is,
the second mover on that?
oops,
Councillor Hurdle, very quickly. It was so quick you didn't see it.
yeah. So the final motion is this: be it moved that council authorizes $15,000 to be transferred between the utility operating fund, and the utility capital reserve fund for future capital projects. And I so move this, your
And your
worship.
seconder for that one? Councillor Hurdle again.
Ooh, he beat you.
Money, you know.
And discussion on this last motion for this evening? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
That's everybody, and that motion has been carried. That takes us out of the consideration of passing on bylaws. Nothing under new business, so it takes us directly into question period. Is there any questions for this evening? Mr. Knopper? Anything submitted?
No one can get on.
Yeah, they can. Nothing was submitted via email, Your worship. I was just double checking.
Any questions from my dear friend in the audience, Augustino? No questions for him?
Did you want the one person on attendance to?
I just asked them to raise their hand if they have a question. We'll give them just a moment. Okay, so at this particular point, Councillor Deputy Mayor's comments? Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship. Because I dial-a-ride drive, I noticed, and today I was doing deliveries for the food bank, and I just want to comment that I don't mind doing the deliveries, but they put them in these huge boxes. They're very heavy for me to carry at my age. I mean, I managed to do it, but I don't like to do it because I don't even do my own groceries in that kind of a big box. So what I'm asking for the public is that if you have any extra of those bags that, you know, or you can donate some to them, then they could put them in smaller bags. It would make it a lot easier to carry the food that we're delivering. Like today was a turkey, a whole bunch of canned food, and potatoes and whatnot for the Christmas dinner, and it was heavy. So just if you have extra, that would be really lovely, or if you would like to donate some bags to the food banks so that they could deliver their food in a lot smaller packages for people who are delivering them, like myself, who are of the age that I don't want to carry anything heavier than a cat. So thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope that you have a safe, happy Christmas, and counselors and staff, if you're working. Oh, you could even do the plastic ones if you want to get rid of your plastic ones. They would take them. But I'm talking about, you know, the reusable bags that you could use over and over again. And perhaps the people that receive the foods could bring them back to the food banks so that they could be reused over again. So you're recycling, which I know Councillor Blanchard's big thing on ecology is to save the world, and we'd like to do that. So if you have these bags and you're not using them, that's a good place to put them because they've got food to deliver and these humongous boxes to carry, unless you want to volunteer to come along with a dial-a-ride driver and deliver these boxes for me. I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
But Merry Christmas to all. You guys all have a safe trip if you're visiting family and whatnot. And thank you, Mayor, for all you do.
Thank
And
you,
council.
Deputy Mayor, and I can tell you that every second trip to Joey's, I forget my bags and have to buy new ones, so I could definitely donate some. Any other member of council, any comments? Okay,
The only other thing is I will take them over there. If you don't want to go there, I will deliver them.
thank you. Any other member of council? Okay. Myself, I'm good for this evening, so at 7:58 PM, I'll be looking for a mover to go into closed session for the Local Governance Act, Section 68(1)C, information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person under local government or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract, and also for 68(1)J, which is a labor employment matter, including the negotiation of collective agreement. So a mover, please. I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Hurdle again. He's quick now. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. Thank you all for attending and watching this evening.